Hello guys. So now tonight I'm going to watch some videos about Mexico. I hear that a couple of days ago, one of the head of the cartel, a very famous person, uh, was killed. I don't know by who, and the violence has sparked since then. But I will see what's going on.
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This
Deadly violence sparked by the military killing of an infamous cartel leader has now spread across at least two-thirds of Mexico's states, with experts warning it could trigger a total war in the country.
Wow.
Reports
Wow. A total war against cartels.
of raging gun battles with authorities and terrifying images of torched buildings and vehicles paint a dire picture of the sudden chaos within the country, as American citizens near the border have been warned to shelter in place while flights are being canceled. So what exactly is going on in Mexico? Here's everything you need to know. At least 20 of Mexico's 31 states have seen violent clashes in the wake of the death of the country's most wanted man. 31 states have seen
At least 20 of Mexico's 31 states, wow, are facing violence.
violent clashes in the wake of the death of the country's most wanted man, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, head of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG in its Spanish initials.
Okay, wait, what is her name? El Mencho. Okay, who is El Mencho? Okay, El Mencho was the founder and leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, which grew into one of Mexico's most powerful and violent criminal organizations. He was killed on February 22nd during a high-stakes Mexican military operation in the town of Tapalpa. Okay, Jalisco. Okay, I will see where is it. Okay, it's here. Okay, key factor about El Mencho, most wanted status. Okay, at the time of his death, he was the most wanted person in Mexico and a top target for the United States, which offered a $15 million reward for his capture. Rise to power. Originally a police officer, he spent time in U.S. prison for heroin trafficking in the 1990s. Before returning to Mexico and founding the CGNG in 2009. Okay.
Oseguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho, died in custody on Sunday, February 22nd, shortly after being captured by Mexican special forces. in a violent shootout in Tapalpa within the Jalisco state. One gruesome clip taken by a Mexican soldier allegedly involved in the firefight shows a bullet casing lodged in his face following the raid. Narco gangs responded to El Mencho's death by blockading highways, setting cars ablaze, and torching businesses as part of their retaliation over the crime boss's death. A harrowing video taken from the Guanajuato province shows a screaming woman with her clothes on fire, bursting out of a burning convenience store as horrified bystanders attempt to put out the flames. Violence spread quickly along the country's west coast, reaching up to the U.S. border with California.
What?
Dozens of people, including cartel members, National Guard members, and civilians, have been declared dead as a result of the clashes. Footage from within Jalisco shows plumes of smoke billowing into the air from city skylines and apparent bullet holes in storefronts.
Oh my god.
The violence eventually shut down the country's second largest city, Jalisco's state capital of
Look, such a beautiful cities. Oh my god. You know, guys, how these criminals should be treated? You know, like in Philippines, in El Salvador, you know, the only language they understand is force, it's violence. They should send army and police, heavily armed, and they should go house to house to find them. You know, in El Salvador, I think it was one of the most violent countries. I think I will check it. What? Okay, what happened to El Salvador's gang members? Okay, since the implementation of a state of exception in March 2022, El Salvador has conducted one of the world's most aggressive crackdown on gangs, fundamentally altering the lives of tens of thousands of individuals. Okay, mass and incarceration. Over 91,000 people has been arrested, roughly 2% of the country's entire adult population. Wow. They are now behind the bars. Okay, but the violence decreased. Wait, with did the violence decreased actions? Okay, did the violence decrease by these actions? Yes, violence in El Salvador had decreased dramatically, according to both official data and independent observers. The country has gone from being one of the most dangerous nations in the world to having one of the lowest homicide rates in the Western Hemisphere. Oh my god. You see, guys, the only language to talk with the criminals, with gangs, is language of force. It's the language of strength. And I mean, the only thing that matters is that they should be sure, when governments they want to do this kind of conduct, they should be sure to minimize the hurting innocent people, and to be sure that these people that they are arresting, they are really involving in criminal activities. But other than that, they should do anything necessary to crack down the criminals. Look, it's such a beautiful country, is Mexico, and now is violence. But even without that violence, the gangs, the cartels, they rooted in this system in the governments, and the corruption, the situation there, just it's not good. It avoid development of the country.
Guadalajara, as cartel members engaged in running gun battles with authorities. The major Mexican resort town of Puerto Vallarta in Jalisco
wow.
was under siege on February 22nd, with tourists being warned to stay indoors as narco gangs went on a rampage. Witnesses told Fox News they were forced to evacuate their rooms with limited hotel food and even venture outside in search of meals while waiting for Mexican authorities to regain control of the city.
Wow.
As panic spread throughout the region, reports initially surfaced of gunfire at Guadalajara International Airport on February 22nd, with one video posted online showing what appeared to be panicked passengers running for their lives. In a statement later in the day, the Pacific Airport Group said the Mexican National Guard had been dispatched to the bustling airport, but maintained that no incidents have been reported inside the facilities and that it was operating as usual. The violence has paralyzed a hugely populated swath of Mexico, with major U.S. airlines canceling travel in and out of Puerto Vallarta on February 23rd. Puerto Vallarta is the country's fourth largest tourism destination, while Guadalajara's airport is the country's third busiest, with 18.7 million travelers every year. 4 professional soccer matches between local clubs in Mexico were also postponed amid the violence near Guadalajara, one of the country's host cities for the 2026 World Cup. According to one expert,
That's complicated. The World Cup also will be there. A couple of games. What?
clubs in Mexico were also postponed amid the violence near Guadalajara. Matches between local clubs in Mexico were also postponed amid the violence near Guadalajara, one of the country's host cities for the 2026 World Cup. According to one expert, the killing of El Mencho could trigger a total war against the Mexican state. Security expert David Saucedo warned CNN Español.
Sino de exterminio, es decir,
This didn't seem to be just an operation to capture El Mencho, but to exterminate him, to use lethal force to bring him down, Saucedo told CNN.
Yeah, that's not bad. If he make one of the most violent cartels in Mexico, so he should be eliminated. But it's not just enough just targeting the cartel. You should go and take the hunt the members, the senior members. Now this is a good opportunity that they go to total war against them. They shouldn't be scared, the governments. They actually their duty is to protect the population, and if they don't do anything, they aren't protecting. Basically, the cartels can buy the government members, they can buy judges, police, and and anyone who wants to talk against them, they are going to assassinate them. So it is necessary to take strong action against them.
In the criminal underworld, such actions are not simply overlooked. The reaction is what we're seeing now: narco-terrorism, blockades, and fires in grocery stores across Mexico, he added. On Monday, February 23rd, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, along with authorities, reported that 2,500 troops had been deployed to Jalisco and neighboring states amid the chaos in the
How many? 2,000?
On Monday, February 23rd, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, along with authorities, reported that 2,500 troops had been deployed to Jalisco and neighboring states amid the chaos in the country that followed El Mencho's death, claiming that, quote, normality was reinstalled after military personnel were deployed. They also reported that 30 cartel operatives were killed in the violence, along with one female bystander, while 70 people were arrested in 7 states across the country. Oseguera Cervantes, a 6th grade dropout and a former cop, became one of Mexico's most feared cartel bosses, following the arrest and conviction of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman by U.S. authorities. The 59-year-old kingpin died in Tapalpa in Jalisco following a raid by Mexican forces. The notorious drug kingpin was seriously injured in a firefight between military commandos and his bodyguards and died shortly after from injuries en route to Mexico City. According to the White House, the U.S. provided intelligence support for the operation, which Scheinbaum confirmed. However, she noted there was no U.S. participation. El Mencho had been indicted several times in Washington, D.C. since 2017, most recently in April 2022 when he was charged with conspiracy and distribution of controlled substances for illegal importation into the U.S.
Okay. So, what is the situation on the ground now?
What's going on in Mexico? Shelter-in-place warnings have been issued in the country after Mexico's army killed the country's most powerful cartel leader, known as El Mencho. Members of the Jalisco New Generation cartel carried out attacks across Mexico in retaliation. Since then, schools have been closed and major airlines have canceled flights into parts of the country. El Mencho's killing marks the biggest blow to cartels since El Chapo was recaptured in 2016, and it comes as the US has pressured Mexico to crack down on criminal operations along the border. What's going on in Mexico? Shelter-in-place.
Oh, they should use intelligence, especially they should take the help of USA to take the cartels one by one down. Okay, we going. What's Okay, Mexico's president said using military force against cartels is a human right. What? Using really? Mexico's president said using military force against cartels is a human right violation. Now those same cartels are destroying entire cities, killing innocent people and displacing thousands of civilians from their homes. Wait, I don't think it's true. I cannot believe it. Wait, I'm going to check. Did really some person said using military force against cartels is a human rights violation? Okay, president has not said that using force against cartels is inherently a human rights violation. Rather, she has argued that a return to a total war strategy, specifically the militarized approach launched in 2006, is illegal and leads to human rights abuses. Okay, so it's different from what that post on X was saying, but I do not agree with her. Okay, and focuses on several legal and strategic points. Rejection of war tactics. She has stated that the war against the narco essentially gave the military permission to kill without any trial, which she considered outside the frame of the law and a path toward fascism. What? I do not agree. Basically, these groups they came out and they are destroying the businesses, the different areas, and make it danger for the country, for people, and not using military. So what is the point of having military? It's not the point to have them for supporting the population, for people, the civilians. So how these thugs can come out and do whatever they want and not taking a strong action against them? Yes, sometimes, guys, I'm going to say, guys, when you have a cancer, you need to do chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is basically toxic. It's bad for the body. But when you have a cancer, you need to use it. If not, it will kill you. It will kill you without any doubt. So you need to take strong actions against this kind of condition. It's not a good idea just to send army in any country to do what? To do against any kind of criminals. You send army? No, for sure, no. But when cartels, when gangs have been developed so much and so deeply in the country, and they are now using their forces against civilians, there is no point to be silent, to take the like a passive position. No, send army. And defense of sovereignty. She has strongly rejected U.S. proposal for unilateral military action and drone strike within Mexico, calling such interventions a violation of Mexican sovereignty rather than just a human rights issue. So if you have sovereignty, so defend your people. If you can't, so what's the problem to take help from a more powerful country? I'm just amazed by her decisions. So we are going to see here. Okay, latest on crisis, Mexico's another day. What? Another day of cartel violence continues in Mexico. Members of Jalisco New Generation Cartel lead a shutout and torch a local OXXO store, while children can be heard screaming in the background. What's going on? Oh my god. Wow. When she said that, she should learn from El Salvador and Philippines. If there are like some human rights issues, so she can try to improve that parts. But it is necessary to use army.
¡Órale, hijo de su puta madre! ¡Órale!
Oh my god.
¡Véngase! ¡Véngase todos! ¡Véngase! ¡Échale, échale! ¡Órale, córrele a la verga!
No, look, they just put on fire everything.
¡Una gente, señor Bencho, a la verga! ¡No más!
And what? They are going to send police to get them and put them in the trial? No, send the army and let army deal with these thugs. What do you mean trial? Is she really caring about trial? What do you want to see? They are basically outside. They are going to stores, scaring people, put the stores and markets on the fire, No, that's terrible. Okay, so okay, after hearing what's going on in Mexico, I thank God Trump is in office. What? What's going on? And have the border closed. Okay. Wow. Horrible. It's such a beautiful country. Now he's under the raid of thugs. So that was for 23rd. So it's 24th. What's going on exactly now? Okay, wait. What is that?
Maintenant, c'est ça, les impôts.
Terrifying, surreal, scary. These are some of the words that American tourist Jim Beck used on Sunday to describe the situation in Puerto Vallarta, a tourist town in Mexico's Jalisco state, as it turns into a war zone. And even those words don't feel adequate enough to describe the magnitude of what's happening. One video obtained by Fox News showed fires lit at a gas station, helicopters circling over the city, and armed government forces on the backs of pickup trucks patrolling the streets. Another video posted on X allegedly showed gang members shooting from a moving vehicle as they headed for a confrontation with Mexican forces. And the violence wasn't just limited to Puerto Vallarta. According to the NY Times, much of the violence happened in Guadalajara, the capital of Jalisco state, more than 300 kilometers from Puerto Vallarta. Violence was also reported in more than 10 other states. All of this violence stemmed from one event, the killing of one of the nation's most powerful cartel bosses, Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, the founder.
Yeah, but you know, this is important. So they eliminated the leader of this group, but as you can see, the members still are there, and someone will take his place. And again, continuing the same corruption and the same as they have been doing. So it's not enough. I don't know what is their next strategy.
And leader of the notorious Jalisco New Generation Cartel. An elusive figure, Oseguera, also known by the nickname El Mencho, was widely considered the most powerful cartel boss in Mexico since the arrest of Joaquim El Chapo Guzman in 2016. He was also the last of the narco bosses who would capture public imagination through a combination of flashy lifestyles and brutal displays of violence inspired by El Chapo and Ismael Elmar Zambada. While his death is a major coup for America and Mexico in their war on drugs, it has also raised a lot of questions, not least of which is how the henchmen of a single gang boss were able to bring an entire nation to its knees. A country on its knees. Even in a conflict as brutal as Mexico's drug war, Sunday was on a whole other level. Jim Vorter, an American with permanent residency in Puerto Vallarta, described armed men ordering people out of vehicles at gunpoint. A resident who has lived in Puerto Vallarta for 23 years said he'd never seen anything like it. One witness told American outlet KWTX that he had seen what appeared to be execution-style murders on his way to the airport. Armed gang members seized control of major roads, torching buses and trucks to create burning barriers that trapped tourists and residents in specific zones. Smoke billowed over the resort town as cartel members set multiple fires. Streets that had been bustling with tourists hours earlier were now deserted, patrolled by armed men in pickup trucks. A Jalisco state official, speaking anonymously to the press, said 7 members of Mexico's National Guard have been killed so far. The violence wasn't contained to Jalisco. In Guadalajara, panic gripped the city's international airport as travelers ducked behind check-in counters and workers in high-visibility vests abandoned their posts in a desperate scramble for safety. In Guanajuato, authorities reported dozens of coordinated attacks across 23 municipalities, with cartel members targeting banks and convenience stores in systematic arsons. In Zapopan, just outside Guadalajara, 6 National Guard members were killed. A jail guard died when prisoners rioted in Puerto Vallarta. An agent from the Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office was murdered in Guadalajara. The body count just kept climbing as the office died when prisoners rioted in Puerto Vallarta. An agent from the Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office was murdered in Guadalajara. The body count just kept climbing as the hours passed. Airlines scrambled to respond, with Southwest, Alaska, and Delta all cancelling flights to Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara. Thousands of tourists found themselves stranded, unable to leave. The U.S. Embassy issued urgent warnings for Americans to shelter in place across multiple states. All in all, Mexican authorities reported more than 250 roadblocks across 20 states, effectively paralyzing large swaths of the country. By Monday morning, most roadblocks had been cleared, but the damage was done. Schools remained closed across multiple states. Guadalajara, a city of 5 million people that's scheduled to host 4 FIFA World Cup matches in June, had been turned into a war zone overnight. The message from the cartel was clear. June...
You've got such a beautiful city. Wow. And it's the host for the World Cup matches in 2026, just in a couple of months. Oh my god. How the governments are so incapable, are so incompetent that they cannot defend the population.
Had been turned into a war zone overnight. The message from the cartel was clear. They could bring an entire nation to its knees whenever they wanted. It's a message that the cartel has been communicating since its 2011 formation under El Mencho, following the fracture of the Milenio cartel and the leadership wrangles that followed. In September 2011, for example, cartel members dumped 35 bodies on a busy avenue in Veracruz during rush hour. But while CJNG is violent, it is also sophisticated, and that sophistication may have helped the group perpetrate Sunday's attacks. Unlike other cartels, CJNG has a corporate structure that's more reminiscent of an American company than a traditional drug cartel. According to the American National Counterterrorism Center, the CJNG used a franchise model to expand beyond its strongholds in Jalisco, Nayarit, and Colima. Spanish-language outlet El País reports that as part of this model, local criminal groups can buy the right to use CJNG brand by paying a tribute to the cartel. As head of the outfit, Oseguera allowed regional leaders to manage day-to-day operations while maintaining centralized strategic control through a hierarchical command structure. Local commanders could pursue whatever profits they wanted in their territories, but the overall direction came from the top. Anne Milgram, the DEA administrator, told Congress that the CJNG and the Sinaloa cartel posed the greatest criminal drug threat the United States has ever faced. And with good reason. According to the DEA, the CJNG is now responsible for trafficking massive quantities of fentanyl into the United States, where it has fueled an overdose crisis that kills tens of thousands of Americans annually. This explains why Washington and Mexico have been aggressively pursuing the CJNG's leaders, including Oseguera's brothers, Abraham, who is in custody in Mexico, and Antonio, who was extradited to the US in 2025, leading to fears within the cartel that if he collaborated, they could capture or kill Oseguera. And that brings us to the 22nd of February 2026, and the operation that brought down one of Mexico's most powerful drug kingpins. The operation. From what...
Okay, so... what is the group name? Wait. I have a question for it. I'm curious to know how many members they have. The estimation. How many? How many members has across Mexico? Okay, so I would see in general how many they have. Maybe they are also in USA and other countries. While exact figures are difficult to verify due to the clandestine nature of organization, recent estimates from security agencies and researchers place the number of Jalisco New Generation Cartel members between 15,000 and over 33,000. Okay, just one group. So they are even the gangs in the small cities that they use this brand. But okay, is it worldwide? Breakdown of membership estimated. US governments estimate the group has between 15 to 20,000 members. Okay, DI combined figures. The Drug Enforcement Administration estimates the CNG group and the Sinaloa cartel together have more than 45,000 members, associates and facilitators operating in over 100 countries. Academic research. Okay. Okay, this is roughly the same. 28 or 30. Okay, so it's around 30,000. Different estimate shows basically the same. So in that case, the NC function less like a single monolithic army and more like a franchise model, sophisticated network. It is reportedly composed of around 90 smaller organizations, a significant increase from 45 groups just a few years ago. Its network of facilitators and brokers extends to approximately 100 countries. Regional dominance. Within Mexico, the cartel has a confirmed presence in at least 20 to 28 states. Okay, with its strongest base in Jalisco. Okay, so the Mexico has only 31 states, and yeah, they are pretty involved in many states. So what they are going to do, send thousands of troops to Jalisco, and they go and hunt down every members that they can find. They can arrest them like what El Salvador did, and they put 100,000. How many? They put in the prison. They are going. If they're going to do that, the other small gangs that they are using the name of this group, they will realize what's going on and they will separate it. They will be separated from that. So it's the only way. They should be very strong from the beginning.
What is publicly known, Mexican Special Forces launched what the Defense Secretariat described as a coordinated effort to capture Oseguera in Tapalpa, a small town in Jalisco. During the raid, the Special Forces operators came under fire before managing to kill 4 cartel members and injure 3, including Oseguera. He would later die while being transported to Mexico City. 2 additional suspects were arrested and authorities seized armored vehicles, rocket launchers, and other weaponry. 3 Mexican soldiers were wounded in the firefight. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, in a post on X, confirmed U.S. involvement, stating that American intelligence agencies provided support for the operation. She emphasized that Oseguera had been a top target for both governments as one of the main traffickers pumping fentanyl into the United States. The details beyond this remain sparse. Mexican authorities have not disclosed how they located Oseguera, how long they had been tracking him before the raid, or any other pertinent information. And given that they might use the same tactics to track down other gang leaders in the future, it's more than likely that they won't reveal their tactics to avoid giving the cartels insight into their operation. As we mentioned in the previous section, what followed Oseguera's death was swift and brutal. A demonstration that even after the death...
You know, guys, I'm curious that why the governments, Mexican governments, they couldn't predict this situation. They are governments, so they must consider many options. So it's sad that they weren't ready.
Of their leader, the CJNG still remains one of the most dangerous cartels in the country. This reaction mirrors the responses seen after other high-profile cartel arrests and deaths, albeit at a much larger scale than we used to. When authorities captured Joaquim El Chapo Guzman in 2016, the Sinaloa cartel erupted in violence, targeting local businesses and the authorities. Whenever such attacks happen, they are usually an attempt by a cartel to demonstrate to the government, general public, and other cartels that despite the capture, or in this case death of its leaders, it still retains the capacity for extreme violence. Still, despite the violence that emerged as a result of Oseguera's killing, President Claudia Sheinbaum is likely to consider it a success because it helps demonstrate that her government is tough on crime. Since Trump returned to office, she has faced relentless pressure to crack down harder on cartels, particularly those trafficking fentanyl. In February 2025, Trump designated 6 Mexican cartels, including the CJNG, as foreign terrorist organizations, and he has repeatedly threatened to send U.S. troops into Mexico to target cartels directly, proposals Sheinbaum has firmly rejected as violent.
I think the main reason that finally Mexico took some action against cartels was because of pressure of Trump on them. If not, I don't think they are tough against crimes. They just try to they let the situation be like that. They had to predict the situation that would happen because they already had another experience with El Chapo. So it wasn't something new. And I'm amazed.
Relations of Mexican sovereignty. Now, that's not to say she refuses to play ball. Since Trump's inauguration, Mexican
What does it mean, Mexican sovereignty? It's like basically cartel sovereignty. They can do whatever they want.
sovereignty. Now, that's not to say she refuses to play ball. Since Trump's inauguration, Mexico has extradited dozens of suspected cartel members to the United States, deployed thousands of National Guard troops to the border, and ramped up operations against trafficking networks. The killing of El Mencho represents the most dramatic demonstration yet of this intensified approach, and it allows Sheinbaum to show Trump that Mexico can handle these threats without American military intervention on its soil.
I don't see that. They just kill one member with the support of intelligence, U.S. intelligence. If they want to show that they can handle, so they should handle the situation after the operation.
On the other hand, the violent response is likely to be one of the biggest headaches of President Sheinbaum's career. As we mentioned earlier, Guadalajara is set to host 4 matches during the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Jalisco state officials expect over 1 million visitors to descend on the city for these games, including a highly anticipated clash between Mexico and South Korea on June the 18th.
Okay.
With the tournament just 4 months away, the images of burning vehicles, roadblocks, and armed cartel members on the streets and travel advisories from multiple governments will probably discourage a significant number of tourists from attending the games. This would be a massive disaster.
Yeah, this is the result of, being indifference against criminals. Every government that they came into power, they try to just manage somehow their period of rule, just to pass and as calm as possible. They avoid tension, and I think this president did the same thing. So they just try to be in power for 4 years, and after that, if they can, re-elected, so 4 years more, and after that, bye. But they don't really they don't have the feeling to solve the problem one time for always. And they cannot do it just with trials. It's basically nonsense, because how you can use court when they can buy judges? They can buy, or they can trade them. They are so powerful, as you can see. So how how police can take action against them if the police members have been already purchased by by cartels. They have money, they have guns, they have power, so they can basically they can rule. So now in 4 months they can do a lot of things, and many tourists don't consider to go in Mexico, and probably governments try to calm down everything. So not a strong action. So this cancer will still be in the country. Because of that, like, one group falls, like El Chapo, they arrested El Chapo, and another group, this group CNG, something like that, El Mencho, became into power. Since 2009, he could create one of the most powerful cartels.
For the state, and as it has invested about $37 million to prepare its infrastructure for the influx of visitors. It's also possible that the violence could hurt the number of World Cup visitors coming to Mexico altogether.
Yeah,
some estimates indicate that the country could welcome as many as 5.5 million visitors during the tournament period, with consultancy firm Deloitte estimating a direct economic impact of approximately $1.24 billion, or about 14% of Mexico's GDP from tourist spending. But this projection was made before cartel violence sent tourists already in the country scrambling for safety and forced airlines to cancel flights. If the situation in Jalisco remains unstable, many international visitors might choose to stay away entirely or redirect their trips to games in the United States and Canada instead. And in many ways, this may be exactly the kind of reaction that the cartel is hoping for. Sunday's meltdown was a demonstration not just of their power and reach, but of CGNG's ability to bring the nation to its knees. One that comes with an implicit warning that they could do it again at any time. Across the border, Trump's administration, meanwhile, will likely tout the operation and fallout as vindication of its hardline approach. Trump has framed fentanyl trafficking as a chemical war against America and has designated the drug and its precursors as weapons of mass destruction, expanding the federal government's authority to combat cartels. The successful elimination of one of the most wanted traffickers in the world provides political ammunition for his aggressive stance on Mexico and validates his threats of military action. The question now becomes, what happens next, both for the cartel and for the broader drug war? What's next?
Good question.
Let's start with the CJNG, the organization that El Mencho founded and led into his death. The group faces an uncertain future, as its top leadership has been systematically dismantled over the past few years, which led Al Jazeera's John Holt.
Oh my god, look, they are just like terrorists.
To note that there is no obvious successor who could quickly take over. As we mentioned in the last chapter, Oseguera's brothers are currently in prison. His son, Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez, known as El Menchito, was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years in March 2025. Without an obvious successor, the cartel faces two likely scenarios. The first is fragmentation. Regional commanders who have been running semi-autonomous operations under Oseguera's oversight may decide to strike out on their own or pledge loyalty to rival organizations. Several candidates could emerge to claim leadership, including Juan Carlos Gonzalez Valencia, Oseguera's stepson, known as LO3, which I assume is in the Spanish way, but I don't know how to say that. Unos, dos, tres? El tres? Maybe, who has long been considered the operational boss of the cartel. Oseguera's daughter, Jessica Johanna Oseguera Gonzalez, who goes by the nickname La Negra, could also vie for the group's leadership. Other potential successors include Audius Flores Silva, a senior regional commander who controls large portions of CJNG territory along the Pacific coast, and Gonzalo Mendoza Gayton, who controls operations in Puerto Vallarta. But none of these figures command the same respect or fear that Oseguera did, and infighting between these factions could tear the cartel apart from within. We've seen this happen multiple times before, including during the formation of CJNG after the collapse of the Millennios cartel. The second scenario involves a new leader, most likely one of the individuals we just mentioned, consolidating power quickly enough with the support of the other leaders to maintain the organization's cohesion. This would require someone with both operational experience and the ability to command loyalty from the various regional cells. But even if a new leader emerges, they will face immediate challenges from rival cartels looking to exploit the CJNG's moment of weakness. This might create a situation where the CJNG, or splinter groups of the organization, are absorbed into other groups. The groups that stand to benefit most from a weakened or fractured CJNG are its long-standing rivals, who have been locked in territorial battles across Mexico. Chief among them is the Sinaloa cartel, which has been competing with the CJNG for control of key trafficking routes in several states across Mexico. Although the Sinaloa cartel has been weakened by its own internal conflicts following the arrests of its leaders, it remains a formidable organization with a...
So basically, nothing will change, not meaningful for people. Yeah, for power can shift, but from one criminal to another one, or division of power between different groups. So, what? The country is still the same. We just replace a group with another group, or with multiple groups. It doesn't change the situation, the corruption that has been rooted since decades ago in Mexico. There is no there is no permanent solution. There is no hopeful solution to resolve the problem. The problem is still persists.
Established networks and experience. If CJNG fractures or its regional commanders become distracted by succession battles, Sinaloa could move aggressively to reclaim territories it lost to the CJNG over the past decade. Other groups poised to capitalize include the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel in Guanajuato, La Familia Michoacana and Los Viagras in Michoacan and Guerrero, and various factions fighting for control in Zacatecas. These smaller organizations have been pushed back by the CJNG's aggressive expansion, but could now see opportunities to reassert control over lucrative smuggling routes, extortion rackets, and drug production facilities. The death of Oseguera essentially opens a window for these rivals to strike while the CJNG is vulnerable, potentially reshaping Mexico's criminal landscape in ways that could make violence even worse in contested territories. The most unlikely scenario in this case is the complete destruction of the CJNG as a drug cartel in Mexico. From past is the even worse in contested territories. The most unlikely scenario in this case is the complete destruction of the CJNG as a drug cartel in Mexico. From past experience,
it's not possible. For sure, it will not collapse completely. No, because the system can still exist, but weaker.
Clear that gangs in the country don't really die, they evolve. And that leads us to our final question. How much of an impact is this going to have on the drug trade? And to be blunt, not very much. The fentanyl supply chain doesn't depend on any single individual. Mexican cartels import precursor chemicals from China, manufacture the drug in clandestine labs scattered across multiple states, and smuggle it across the border through hundreds of different routes. Even with Oseguera gone, the CJNG still controls ports, production facilities, and distribution networks. Someone else will step into his role, or multiple someones will carve up his territory and continue operations independently. The economics of the drug trade also work against any lasting success from kingpin removals. Fentanyl is cheap to produce, highly profitable, and there's massive demand in the United States. As long as those fundamentals remain unchanged, traffickers will continue supplying the market regardless of who leads them. Removing one supplier just creates space for another to expand operations. Mike Vigil, former chief of international operations at the DEA, told Al Jazeera that killing or capturing cartel heads doesn't have a major impact on the drug trade. He argued that authorities need to go after the infrastructure, logistics, money laundering operations, and armed wings of these organizations if they want to see real change. Perhaps the most significant impact of Oseguera's death won't be on drug trafficking, but on Mexico's security situation. If the CJNG fractures, Mexico could see a surge in violence beyond even that witnessed on Sunday as factions fight for control and rival cartels like the Sinaloa organization move into contested territories. For now, at least, Mexico's authorities claim to have cleared most of the roadblocks, and while it seems that the immediate violence has subsided, there are fears that the region could quickly descend into violence again. What remains to be seen is whether Oseguera's death represents a meaningful blow in the fight against Mexico's cartels, or simply the prelude to another chapter of cartel violence.
No, I feel That's sad. And you know, when you see just one cartel that could create so much problem in a country, and you can see if there are many other cartels, just one portion of the criminal population is under control of these cartel. And yeah, it's terrible. So I'm very curious to realize how El Salvador could control the cartels, because El Salvador was very bad situation. El Salvador gang crackdown. Okay. So Al Jazeera.
Estado de condena. 100 años antes de...
No, I don't like. How El Salvador is winning its brutal war on gangs. Okay, 5 months ago.
El Salvador, February 2023. Cameras roll as thousands of shirtless men, shackled, heads bowed, march into a brand new mega prison, the Terrorism Confinement Center, or CCOT.
Look.
Its mastermind, President Nayib Bukele, the self-styled world's coolest dictator who has waged war on gangs that have plagued the country.
Coolest dictator? Wait. It's a dictatorship? Is El Salvador a dictatorship? It's not a dictatorship. Whether El Salvador is a dictatorship depends on whether you look at its official legal structure or its actual governance in 2026, the official status. Constitutionally, El Salvador remains a presidential representative democratic republic. However, international watchdogs and experts now largely classify it as a hybrid regime or competitive authoritarian state. Arguments for calling it a dictatorship. By February 2026, city critics and international observers argue the country has transitioned into a dictatorship based on several key developments. Abolition of term limits. In August 2025, the Legislative Assembly, controlled by President Party, voted to scrap presidential term limits, allowing for indefinite re-election. Concentration of power. Bukele's administration has replaced the Attorney General as Supreme Court Justice with loyalists, effectively removing all checks and balance. A state of exception. A state of emergency has been in place since March 2022, suspending constitutional rights like due process and freedom of assembly for nearly 4 years. Media and NGO crackdowns. The government has passed law to tax and restrict NGOs and has been accused of using state resources to intimidate journalists. The counter perspective. Okay, the counter. President Bukele has famously embraced the label, once jokingly changing his Twitter bio to the world coolest dictator. High popularity. Despite the democratic backsliding, Bukele maintained an approval rating above 80-90%. Democratic mandate. Supporters argue he isn't a dictator because he was overwhelmingly re-elected in a 2024 landslide where opposition candidates were free to run. U.S. recognition. In 2025, the Trump administration officially stated that Bukele is not a dictator, praising his democratic-based legislative process. In summary, while the Economist Intelligence Unit and Human Rights Group now consider the regime a consolidate dictatorship as of 2026, the government maintained its democratic legitimacy through its massive popular support and regular elections. So, it's difficult to say it's dictatorship yet, although it was, as you can see, there is some actions that doesn't seem very democratic and at least dangerous because it opened a gate for the president to choose dictatorship if he wants. There is this risk, but until now I don't see it as a dictatorship. But I would like to know if Human Rights Group said the same thing about Philippines, about the president at that time. He's pretty famous. I don't remember his name. Who was the president of Philippines? Who cracked down gangs? Oh yeah, Rodrigo Duterte. Yes, he's pretty famous. The Punisher. his nickname is the Punisher. During his long as a mayor of Davao City. Okay, the war on drugs. Immediately after taking office in June 2016, Duterte launched a nationwide campaign targeting drug traffickers and users. High death toll. Official police figures state that over 6,000 suspects were killed in operations. However, human rights groups and International Criminal Court estimates the true number of fatalities, including those killed by vigilante or death squad, could be as high as 30,000. Okay, in October 2024, Duterte admitted during a Senate inquiry that he had maintained a death squad of gangsters to kill criminals during his time as mayor. So, I'm not supporting how he controlled, but it was effective to eradicate corruption. I mean, the only problem that I can see in that is that if they targeted someone mistakenly, I mean, if someone was innocent and they thought that, oh, he's maybe criminal, that's the big problem. But if they were member of the gangs, I don't see many problems, guys. The gangs are like cancers. The criminals, what they are doing, they're living for themselves. And they don't care about what happened to others. They don't care about the corruption and the massive violence that they created in the country. But only they think about their benefits, interests, money, and all other actions that corrupted people do. But I want to know, did the human rights groups consider him as a dictator? Okay, human rights groups and international observers generally categorize Rodrigo Duterte as an authoritarian strongman rather than a traditional dictator. Though many have used the term dictator to describe his style of rule, while he remains a democratically elected leader who stepped down at the end of his term into 2022. This action led to widespread accusations of dictatorial behavior. Yeah, but he wasn't a dictator. This is what we know. And his methods was effective. So I mean, the only thing that I'm worried about is that someone innocently was punished. But I don't know what method they used to find out who is criminal, who isn't. But I think he could save at least during when he was in power. He could make life much better for Filipinos. Wait, I will ask a question. Was his method effective against gangs and did it make life safer for people? Is a tale of two realities. If you ask the average person on the street in Manila, they would likely say yes. If you look at the long-term data and international reports, the effectiveness is much more questionable. Short-term perspective, safer street. Duterte's methods were highly effective at changing the public mood, public sentiment. For years, Philippines reported feeling safer. By 2019, a social weather station's survey showed that 82% of Filipinos were satisfied with the drug war, citing a perceived drop in crime in their local neighborhoods. Visible crackdown. The sheer violence of the campaign forced drug pushers and gangs to go into hiding. The fear factor cleared many street-level drug dens that had plagued communities for decades. The data, did crime actually drop? I think when he says the actual impact on crime is a mix of yes and no, I think when he left the office, the situation gradually returned to the same situation, I think. I talked with a Filipino, and she told me during his period of ruling, the country was safe. But when he left the office, the situation became worse and worse. Actual impact on crime is mix of yes and no. Homicide spikes. While common crimes like robbery and theft decrease, the homicide rates actually increased during the peak of the drug war due to the thousands of police and vigilant killings. Yeah, but I do not consider it because it was a war against criminals. So if the number is the criminals who were killed, we should not consider it. We should consider after the war. Index crimes fell. According to the Philippine National Police, index crime dropped by over 50% during his first few years. However, critics argue this was partially due to people being too afraid to report crimes or go outside. I don't know why people should be afraid to report crimes. I don't think. I mean, for sure, the criminals were scared when they are seeing that, oh, a war against them has been started, so they will be more cautious. Okay, would you like to compare this to El Salvador's Bukele model, which has seen a much more statistically significant drop in murders compared to Duterte's campaign? So maybe later, but for now, continue to watch the video.
Decades, using mass arrests and brutal incarceration. Once the murder capital of the world, El Salvador is now one of the safest countries in the Americas.
Wait. Okay. So, Latin America homicide rates in 2024 per 100,000 inhabitants. So you can see Ecuador, oh my god, Ecuador is 38. It's the highest. Venezuela 26, Honduras, Mexico. So basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, Mexico is this 6 cm. Okay, is the 6 in this position. El Salvador, wow, it's much safer. Oh my god.
But critics say this comes at a price. Thousands jailed without due process, allegations of torture, and power concentrated in one man's hands. This is the story of El Salvador's brutal path to peace, and why the safety Bukele delivered could come at a dangerous cost. 2015, El Salvador, a small country of about 6 million people in the Americas, is the murder capital of the world.
Wow, look guys. It was more than 100. More than 100, and suddenly it drops to less than 2.
103 homicides per 100,000 people. Entire neighborhoods are controlled by gangs like MS-13 and Barrio 18. Extortion, kidnappings, and killings are a daily reality. But something unprecedented happened. The murder rates plunge, halving in just 3 years.
One theory is that the previous government was beginning to talk to gang leaders to find some sort of modus vivendi with these groups that would allow them to bring homicide rates lower while leaving the gangs with significant political power.
While homicides fell, gangs still ruled. Enter Nayib Bukele, a young mayor turned political outsider with giant ambitions.
He was a former mayor of San Salvador. He'd had some success there increasing security, and he presented himself as a breath of fresh air.
Bukele's background is in marketing. He has a really refined sense of how to present himself. He's obviously incredibly social media savvy.
Since the civil war in El Salvador, there have been two parties. Both had become mired in corruption.
This idea that the political system is not delivering for people, Bukele was able to tap into that.
Then in 2019, a key part of his message was, we can return Salvador to normality.
Bukele's election was a shock to the political establishment. He used his first term to amass more and more power. But true to his word, his territorial control plan sees killings in the country continue to fall. El Salvador felt at its safest for decades. But in 2022, a single weekend changed everything.
Wow.
An increased army presence on the streets in El Salvador, an immediate reaction to a bloody weekend. 62 homicides on Saturday, the most in one single day in more than 20 years.
March 2022, a weekend of gang violence leaves 87 dead, shattering El Salvador's fragile sense of safety.
Bukele initiated a state of emergency.
There was the removal of habeas corpus, the ability for the military to conduct policing operations,
to round up anyone even suspected of being a gang leader and imprison them.
It was meant to be about 30 days. It's been systematically extended every single month since then.
In just a few years, over 75,000 people are detained, including thousands of minors. Mass trials see up to 900 defendants at once, and gang sentences stretch to 60 years. 2% of the entire population is now behind bars.
2%.
As cells overflowed, Bukele turned to his boldest project yet, a mega prison.
Wow.
This is the Terrorism Confinement Center, CCOT. Opened in 2023 to hold El Salvador's most feared gang members.
I mean, guys,
Opened
just look at him. I mean, just by looking at him, you can realize probably he's a criminal. Just you don't need like searching for proofs and after that to arrest him. You can arrest him and after that searching for the proof.
2023 to hold El Salvador's most feared gang members and send a message far beyond its borders.
Often these authoritarians have terrible prisons. It's a sort of dirty secret. Bukele is rather the opposite, with these slickly produced videos.
With men who are completely tattooed all the way up.
Why does he do that? Because he thinks this is a simple battle.
It's billed as the model prison where the worst of the Salvadoran gangs are being housed.
Wow.
CCOT holds 40,000 inmates, the largest prison in the Americas.
40,000.
256 cells crammed with at least 90 prisoners, less than a square meter each, and below Red Cross guidelines. Bunks are bare metal sheets shared between inmates, and each cell has just 2 toilets, no walls, no doors, no privacy, all under harsh artificial light that never turns off, while guards watch from above through a steel mesh ceiling.
Bukele is completely unapologetic about all this, but of course, what he's doing is deeply controversial.
NGOs have reported over 300 deaths in the Salvadoran prison system. Instances of torture reported over 300 deaths in the Salvadoran prison system. Instances of torture, of being beaten by guards, of being, in some cases, sexually abused by guards.
Tens of thousands that are there in CCOT have no voice. They don't have lawyers. They don't have access to communication.
Despite this, Bukele's popularity has soared.
There was another election last year when he got more than 80% of the vote. That was genuine displays of popularity.
People are able to walk down the street at night freely for the first time in their lives.
Wow.
You can't really undersell that.
But that safety has come with a price. Unprecedented power concentrated in one man's hands. And now, his model is gaining admirers far beyond El Salvador's borders.
Yeah, you know, so there are some important questions about how he's treating them. But his method was effective, and maybe they are claiming that now power is concentrated under just one man's hand. But the point is that before it was, the power was divided between gangs. And gangs, they were absolutely violent. That's, you know, guys, it's effective. It's effective. So you can just improve your method, how to deal with criminals. But that doesn't mean the method using army, it's wrong. So Mexico also can use that.
Across Latin America, Bukele's playbook is spreading. This map highlights countries where political leaders have openly embraced elements of Bukele's security strategy.
He's something of a poster boy. The question is whether it can actually be mimicked elsewhere.
In Honduras, they launched another state of exception. Extortion went down a little bit, murders went down a little bit, but then yo-yoed right back up. And then in Ecuador, of course, Daniel Noboa declared a state of internal armed conflict against gangs. And similarly, we saw a moderate decline in homicide rates. That being said, I don't think that it's going away anytime soon. In places like Peru, Chile, which are both heading into elections, the number one issue that a lot of voters have is insecurity. I think we're very likely to see heavy-fisted candidates rising to the top in some of these elections.
Even Washington, normally quick to condemn abuses, has embraced Bukele as a partner.
Both countries are trying to use their relationship with one another as a means of signaling.
He's had no issue with allowing the United States to portray El Salvador and the CICOP prison as a hellhole that immigrants could well end up there.
This facility is one of the tools in our toolkit that we will use if you commit crimes against the American people.
Bukele has sort of tried to make himself a flag bearer for this. If he can lock in that relationship with the US, Bukele thinks that by 2028, he will be in a very firmly entrenched position to remain in power.
Bukele's success has cemented his authority, and with it, his grip on power. In 2024, he won a second term despite a constitutional ban, after a court packed with his allies cleared the way. By 2025, his party abolished term limits altogether, allowing him to run indefinitely. Opponents now warn that democracy in El Salvador is dead.
We've seen a remarkable decline in violence, but also a remarkable consolidation of Bukele's control over the Salvadoran state.
Total control.
Yeah, that's a little bit dangerous. It's not yet democracy dead, but it's dangerous.
Of the Congress, complete control of the courts. Politicians told me people might feel that their lives have been changed for the better. They don't have to fear the gangs anymore. But there might soon come a time when they fear their own government. If you have a really powerful and dangerous government that can do whatever it wants, how do you get out of that situation?
Yeah. Okay, that can be a danger of it. The murder rate dropping off 95% is enough proof it's working. So one of the videos that I was watching about Mexico, it was this one.
Terrifying, surreal.
So I just like it. It was a good one. Okay, just I check something, guys. Okay, I will just check something, guys. I want to know if I continue the stream or I'm going to sleep. I will just check. Okay. How Mexico top cartel boss was killed by special forces.
U.S. military intelligence tracked the girlfriend of Mexico's top cartel boss, leading them to his secret location. Was that baddie worth it? Then, Mexican and U.S. special forces descended on the small town of Tapalpa in a killer capture mission. Aerial surveillance spotted multiple men armed with rocket launchers and machine guns. To give you an idea of the kind of psychopath that they're going up against, El Mencho is the founder of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, one of the 2 top dogs in the country. He's responsible for killing hundreds of thousands with fentanyl and leaving behind a trail of mass graves in Mexico, where all that's left are a stack of shoes next to an oven. If there is anything that Mexico and the United States can agree on, it's this guy's gotta go. That's why they partnered on this mission in a new level of cooperation between the 2 nations. The US deployed their new Joint Interagency Task Force Counter Cartel, and their whole meaning in life is to map out networks of narco members on both sides of the US-Mexico border. The task force is a mix of intelligence personnel and law enforcement from within the US military that help provide targeting information for the on-the-ground Mexican army, a high-stakes version of a trust fall. But this actually sounds very familiar to how the 2 have partnered for years already, for decades really, including the capture of El Chapo in the past. So what's different about this? Well, it appears to be the level of on-the-ground involvement. Mexico's defense minister and the U.S. defense officials both confirmed the operation was part of bilateral coordination and cooperation with the United States, which is the best kind of coordination, and that they received supplementary information from U.S. authorities.
That's very important, guys. You know, to do especially this kind of action, to have information, to have intels, it's essential for the success of the operation. That's very important. I mean, Mexico has this opportunity that USA interest is to crack down these gangs, so they can collaborate and to take down as much as possible with the help of USA these gangs.
Imagine how much of a problem you have to be in order to get the US and Mexican government to put their differences aside and team up with each other. Attack helicopters armed with Gatling guns moved in over the objective as close air support. The way they captured him is insane, and that's only the beginning of the story because it sparks a full narco war. This video is sponsored by SDI. If you're interested in a career in building and repairing firearms or joining the growing drone industry, you can go to Sonora Desert Institute. They offer online degrees and certificate programs that cover a variety of firearms and drone related topics. At SDI, you can learn how to build platforms like bolt guns, ARs, 1911s, and even pump shotguns. SDI's updated programs now include training with an actual physical tabletop lathe that they send directly to your home for hands-on work. They offer an Associate of Science in Firearms Technology or a certificate in Uncrewed Technology aerial systems. Sonora Desert Institute is an accredited online college that helps students build real-world skills for careers in the firearms and drone industry.
So annoying for these 2 countries that they become united, especially at this time. But I think beside that, because he has been working since 2009, but I think one important element is the pressure that Trump put on Mexican governments to take strong actions against cartels. I think this is maybe the real reason that finally Mexico took this bold action.
Get what you want out of it.
SDI offers flexible online programs with hands-on components that can be completed at home. They have experienced faculty and student success teams. Learn more by clicking my link. Target on Engaged El Mencho. Rest of firefight broke out, and the Mexican army, the team engaged El Mencho and his henchmen, trading automatic gunfire. Overhead, the attack helicopters opened up with Gatling and his henchmen. Firefight broke out. When the joint team reached their target, in the description down below or the pinned comment. Now back to the video. When the joint team reached their target on the ground to make the arrest, a firefight broke out, and the Mexican army, the team engaged El Mencho and his henchmen, trading automatic gunfire. Overhead, the attack helicopters opened up with with Gatling gunfire pouring it down on the objective. Troops pushed the narco fighters back into the surrounding hills and into the woods, where they chased them and blocked them off, giving them nowhere to run by surrounding them and boxing them in. When we look at the topography of where the battle took place, you could see how the gunmen were forced into the hills, and there isn't much cover for them in the wide open rural plains. When the dust had settled on the Mexican standoff, 8 cartel sicarios were killed on the scene, and their boss El Mencho was confirmed eliminated. He died from gunshot wounds on the way to the hospital. 3 Mexican security forces were injured in the initial assault. The bravery of the Mexican military was captured in this viral video of one of the Mexican troops who had legitimately caught a bullet with his teeth. I'd buy that man a cervezas any day. Then tactical site exploitation moved in, and they confiscated multiple narco armored vehicles and freaking rocket launchers. The US and Mexican government high-fived and rejoiced, but it was a premature celebration because, as we'll see, killing El Mencho was only the beginning of the fight. Armed cartel gunmen took to the streets in retaliation for the death of their boss. The Mexican army engaged the cartel in gunfights throughout the state. All hell broke loose, basically. It was like the Purge, but on the streets of Mexico. Armed CGNG cells stopped innocent people in the middle of the highway, pulled them out of their cars, poured gasoline all over it, and lit them on fire. Can you imagine that happening to you? They're burning down businesses left and right like it's GTA 6 out there, but they managed to set up over 250 roadblocks across 20 of the 31 Mexican states. They even broke out heavy excavators like an engineering brigade. This looks more like an insurgency than a criminal organization. The tactics that the cartel is using here with these blockades is to create choke points that prevent Mexican soldiers from getting reinforcements to the objective. It's to reduce their ability to have mobility in response and to make them less effective. They're also using the blockades to stop tourists from getting out, to create traps and to hold them as potential hostages. And I just realized that last bit of B-roll that we just used might have been AI generated, and I'm such an unk I can't even tell at this point anymore. But it's a huge problem because when there's chaos like this, it's difficult for people to determine what's really going on the ground. Their ultimate goal, the cartel here, is to create fear in the population and the Mexican army. So Mexican officials were concerned about targeting El Mencho because of the chaos that it would cause. But the US government has been putting increasingly every single type of pressure. They're pulling all of the levers that they can on Mexico to get them to act quickly against cartel bosses. Because the relationship between these two governments...
That's true. I mean, USA took put a lot of pressure, especially after Maduro was captured by US. I think Mexico could feel, more pressure to finally take action. But that's terrible. Such a horrible government that they are scared. They are scared from cartels. This is true that they are powerful, but the government should take a strong action. Governments always are more stronger, especially they have the help of USA because they are in the same direction. The interest of Mexico and the interest of USA is to eliminating the cartel. So they are allies in that topic. I'm amazed that always they try to somehow downplay and do not take strong actions to finally, they try to co-living with them, but it's not possible. It avoids the growing of the country with this level of corruption, and that's bad. How there was basically no one in the governments, in the army, in the police to warn the consequences of eliminating El Mencho. They couldn't predict it and get ready before things happened. I don't understand.
Has been super tense recently on both sides. The US government has threatened to tariff Mexico heavily and threatened to take unilateral military action as leverage for them to do more about the cartel violence. Through this pressure, Mexico has recently sent 90 high-profile narco terrorists that were extradited to the United States. But is it too little too late? Evidence that El Mencho's death and all of this has to do with US pressure is because Mexico's President Sheinbaum has always in the past avoided operations that targeted cartel leaders due to the risk of triggering this kind of retaliatory violence. The governor of Jalisco, Pablo Lemus, started live tweeting the chaotic.
We recommend staying in your home until the situation is under control. We are in full coordination with the federal governments regarding the operation they carried out in Jalisco.
Aftermath of El Mencho's death. He stated that everyone needed to stay in their homes and that the government had activated a quote-unquote code red, rojo, which is about as bad as it sounds, essentially putting the entire state in Mexico into a lockdown after the cartel went nuts because their boss was killed. It's an urgent message to the public that means that public transportation is suspended, residents are told to shelter in place indoors and not go outside. It's clear why. Look at how this gunman was leisurely hanging in the middle of the road like it's a Tuesday, bragging about being in control of the highway here with impunity to avenge El Mencho. And so this is what we're looking at here. This is why people think that they're narco-terrorists, because they scare the entire state into forcing them to not go outside and to shutter their windows. Wild choice here, though, recording yourself doing a crime when there are an army of psychopaths at Palantir working to identify you based on your biometrics. In retaliation to the retaliation, though, the Mexican army surged combat patrols to fight the cartel back. But then things got worse. So there were rumors circulating at first that cartel executed a coordinated attack on the Guadalajara airport, the second largest city in Mexico. I mean, it'd be almost like if the LAX Los Angeles airport went down. I can't imagine an airport being shut down by a criminal group. Terrified innocent civilians fled from the scene. It later turned out that it was a false alarm. There was no attack on the airport, but it shows the kind of hysteria that can spiral out of control with fear from the cartels, can shut down a whole airport without firing a shot. Then I see something interesting happen in the midst of all this chaos, because when there's a crisis, some organizations will never let it go to waste. The head of the private security company named Saber Defense, he says that they've deployed aviation assets and security personnel to Mexico, and they currently have pilots and aircraft on standby for private security extractions of US citizens in Puerto Vallarta. Almost all of those private security guys are former special forces who would then be operating inside of Mexico without diplomatic cover. The type of international kerfuffle that might cause is very interesting to think about. We know that US private military contractors went to Colombia for many years under a $600 million contract where they fought against narco-terrorists there. So is that something that we're going to see here? An increase in private military organizations from the US kind of going to Mexico now? This violence should come as no surprise, though, because
interesting. So maybe a private organization go there.
Over 23,000 homicides were reported in Mexico in 2025. That's 5 times the amount that were killed in the entire global war on terror in just 1 year. But what shocked me even more about those numbers is that that's 5 times the amount that were killed in the entire global war on terror in just 1 year. But what shocked me even more about those numbers is that that's actually low. They've dropped 30% since last year. But a lot of people believe that those numbers are being manipulated now, because while murders are down 30%, disappearances in Mexico are up 16%, which suggests to me that maybe the Mexican government might be trying to hide murder numbers by classifying them as disappearances instead. We see this done in the United States as well. What we're seeing now...
what they are doing is that probably before they considered the disappearing as murder, but now they just put it in another category, maybe, and to decrease the homicide rate. No.
That is why those murder numbers are so high. Narco violence in Mexico threatens U.S. interests far beyond drugs or crime, though. The United States wants to invest heavily in Mexico as an alternative to their greatest rival, China. But doing this is difficult with the security threat and instability of narco organizations. It may have been true at one time that if American demand for drugs stopped, then the supply would stop and the cartels would have no money. But the problem has become far more complicated. And it explains how El Mencho's cartel has been able to fund this massive countrywide retaliation. Beginning in 2018, they started hijacking tanker trucks at gunpoint, and then they directly bribed refinery owners and extorted rig workers. This practice became so profitable and widespread that cartel fuel thieves have their own nickname. The huge problem here is that this money is now rivaling the amount that they make through the drug trade, and that kind of funds makes them powerful enough to stand up to the state. But there is a rule that they forgot. You don't touch America's boats, and you don't touch America's oil. That's why the cartel is getting the heat right now, I think. Take a look at how Mexico is crisscrossed by pipelines. These run from oil fields to refineries and then to ports. That's millions of gallons of oil just flowing through that the cartel wants to target. The way the operation works from the inside is cartel fighters recruit former oil workers to join them.
Yeah.
These subject matter experts know enough about the system to pioneer ways to tap into those oil pipelines. It's impossible to secure all of them throughout the country, right? The cartel is now working hand in hand with corrupt Americans to steal $20 billion of fuel from the Mexican government a year. They use hidden hoses that are dangerously connected to pipes that sometimes explode, but usually they just continuously siphon fuel to secret pickup spots. American export companies buy diesel legally, then they fake their export documents pretending they aren't shipping fuel to Mexico, but they are. They send the fuel to cartel-owned companies in Mexico, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unwittingly. This is huge for the cartel because right now fentanyl prices have fallen 80% within the last.
Oh, this is this is the complication. I mean, for sure, we just know a part of their activity. They are much more deeper. They are more vast. But the only way is to take a strong action.
2 years. Here's the thing that I think people aren't getting is that when you have an extra $20 billion in funds, you can do just about anything with it. And even famous units like the Mexican Navy, the Mexican Marines that are so well known for being untouchable. Last September, high-ranking officers in the Mexican Navy were among 14 arrested in northern Mexico as part of a fuel smuggling ring. The incident has been called Mexican Navy's Black Week. It created a huge internal problem of not knowing who to trust anymore. And if you look too deep into what they're doing over there, you get got. Because one of the top investigators at the Tamaulipas Attorney General's office was assassinated by the Gulf Cartel for digging too deep into their fuel smuggling net. Just look at how they're...
Yeah, I mean, this is what they are going to do. This is for sure they are going to do. They can buy police, army, judges, attorneys, the government members, and anyone who wants to be like clean, who wants to do the correct job, in the correct way. They will be targeted. Whether they're going to surrender, they're going to get money and follow the cartels, whether they are going to close their eyes, just doing anything unrelated to cartels, or they are trying to fix the problem, they are trying to do investigation, they want to do something to take them out, but they will be targeted. That's sad.
Using this extra illicit fuel revenue.
Such a beautiful city. Oh my god. Just
Tamaulipas Attorney General's office was assassinated by the Gulf Cartel for digging too deep into their fuel smuggling net. Just look at how they're using this extra illicit fuel revenue. The raid on El Mencho is just the most recent example of rumors of US forces and FBI agents on the ground inside Mexico. Take the capture of one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives, for example. A cartel-linked narco boss named Ryan Wedding. Yes, that same Ryan Wedding. The former Canadian Olympic snowboarder from the 2002 games, who somehow went from carving up the powder on the snowboard to allegedly running a billion-dollar cocaine empire under Sinaloa cartel protection, like one casually does, right? For more than a decade, US authorities say Wedding hid inside of Mexico, protected by cartel networks. He was moving massive quantities of cocaine across all of the Americas, and he was allegedly ordering multiple murders tied to his trafficking operation. Then suddenly he's captured in Mexico and flown straight to California in U.S. custody, and that's where the story gets really murky, I think, because U.S. officials framed it as a major joint law enforcement success, but Mexico's President Sheinbaum immediately downplayed any foreign role, saying that Wedding voluntarily surrendered at the United States Embassy in Mexico and said that Wedding turned himself in and showed what may have been an AI-generated Instagram post as proof. It's okay, I get fooled by AI all the time, I'm an unk and I admit it. But to make things even more confusing, Ryan Wedding's own attorney said that he didn't turn himself in willingly and that he was arrested by officials. Meanwhile, reporting from Mexico and U.S. outlets suggests different things, that the FBI personnel were actually involved on the ground in Mexico during the arrest, something that's extremely sensitive because U.S. agents are generally barred from those type of unilateral or even joint operations over there. But whatever the truth is, one thing is clear. A cartel-protected narco boss who lived safely in Mexico for over decades now, suddenly in U.S. custody, and nobody can quite agree how it happened. Cartel bosses are getting yoinked and dropped all over the place in this last year. The situation on the US-Mexico border is just getting weirder and weirder, more dangerous, in a way that almost nobody fully comprehends at the moment. A few days ago, US military personnel operating along the border near El Paso detected an unidentified object crossing into US airspace. They tracked it, they classified it as a potential threat, and then they shot it down. Although it might have been a balloon that they shot down, or it could have been a cartel drone. At first, nobody could agree on what it was. Some reports said that it might have been a party balloon. Others suggested a small aircraft, but almost immediately a third possibility started circulating among border security circles, that it was a cartel drone. What we do know is that authorities temporarily...
Okay, the FAA and DOW acted swiftly to address a cartel drone incursion. Okay, the threat has been neutralized and there is no danger to commercial travel in the region. Yeah, if they do not, the problem with cartels is that they work for money. They aren't only it's not correct to imagine that they only try to trade drugs. No, they can be used by dictators, by the by other countries like Russia, China, and other that are enemies of USA. They can try to use them, give them money to act instead of them. For example, to target some people, to try to make problems inside the country, and you can create. So they are very dangerous, and especially they are equipped with drones.
Shut down El Paso International Airport. That's 2 international airports shut down in like 2 weeks across different borders because of the cartel. That is extraordinarily rare, and it's something that we haven't seen since 9/11. Drones have become one of the most dangerous emerging tools in cartel operations, and it's not clear how US authorities or Mexican authorities are supposed to handle them. I remember over here by me in New Jersey, there was a whole kerfuffle about drones flying overhead, and it turned out to be from the US government, but it's unclear what the response to these are supposed to be. And it happens now many thousands of times per month. As many as 2,000 cartel incursion drones happen per month. Many are simple surveillance platforms, scouts in the sky, mapping border patrol movements. They're just identifying gaps in fences and tracking when these smuggling corridors are clear. So far, most of the drones haven't been weaponized, but the trajectory, I think, is obvious and really freaking concerning, because cartels are already escalating against US personnel on the ground. Intelligence shared among federal and local agencies have indicated that some criminal groups have begun circulating bounty structures targeting American law enforcement and border officials. The reported tiered payouts are pretty freaking chilling. A few $1,000s for collecting and doxing agents' information, roughly.
Okay. Cartels have disseminated a structured bounty program to incentivize violence against federal personnel with payout escalating based on rank and action taken. $2,000 for gathering intelligence or doxing agent including photos and family details. Oh my god. 5 to 10,000 for kidnapping or non-lethal assault on standard ICE CBP officers. Up to $50,000 for the assassinations of high-ranking officials.
$10,000 for kidnapping, or up to $50,000 for killing senior officials. That kind of incentive normal $50,000.
In Portland and Chicago, Antifa groups have provided logistical support such as pre-stage protest supplies, doxing of agent identities, and on-the-ground interference to shield cartel-linked individuals from deportations. Oh my
for killing senior officials. That kind of incentive normalizes violence against U.S. agents. It's increasingly looking like an insurgency. The escalation this year has gotten worse as we've seen what they are smuggling in. It's more than drugs. Now these gunmen are increasingly overwhelming security forces with 50 caliber rounds that were originally produced at Lake City Munition Plant in Kansas City, Missouri. It's the small arms factory for U.S. military production, just pumping out billions of rounds. But on the morning of November 30th, 2019, a convoy of pickup trucks carrying gunmen entered the town of Villa Union, and they started spraying 50 cal machine gun fire. Eventually, the Mexican army did what they do best. They drove in and they murked 19 of the cartel cold. But 4 police officers were killed and 2 civilians. An investigation, though, later found that those 50 cal rounds ended up being third-party purchases by private citizens in the retail market that was then sent to the cartels instead of military use.
Wow.
Because by allowing civilians to buy ammo, it makes it cheaper for the military. Then the Mexican government themselves also bought some 50 caliber rounds. So it somehow landed in the cartel's hands, and they've used these to shoot down helicopters and assassinate government officials. The Jalisco New Generation cartel uses tactics that are more like a military. They've shot down helicopters, they've assassinated politicians, and this is exactly the kind of retaliation that we expect during one of these events, because when El Chapo's son was captured in 2019, there was a massive 700 gunman battle that took place in broad daylight, and they only stopped once they got what they wanted, which was the return of El Chapo's son. But this violence today is a little bit less clear what they want in return. The CJNG is the same cartel faction that carried out an assassination attempt against the now head of the federal security, Garcia Harfuch. A full platoon of 40 gunmen executed a carefully coordinated ambush plan against him. They intercepted his armored vehicle at dawn in 2020 using military tactics. They threw grenades, they pelted it with machine gun fire, and they shot at it with well-aimed 50 caliber sniper rifle shots right on Mexico capital city Grand Boulevard. Garcia survived, but was shot 3 times, and 2 of his guards were killed. There's a parallel armed power growing in Mexico, you guys. The deeper the cartel embed into the energy and they take over these entire regions, the more inevitable direct confrontation from the United States becomes. Hopefully, the joint cooperation groups between the Mexican and U.S. military are able to put a serious dent in their operations this year. Check out this video on how the United States is already conducting shaping operations, covert action against Iran, or
guys,
this whole plan.
That was a very good video, and he explained it very well. So the situation is worse. Basically, when they wait more, I mean, imagine the drone technology is something like recent, if we can imagine it. So before it was only under control of military, but now you have small drones, cheap drones. You can make it for the military use or for spying, and cartels now can use it. Now they are finding more effective ways to retaliate. The point is that if they would do like 10 years ago, they would take actions 10 years ago, strong actions, the situation, the cost would be less than today for Mexico and USA. If they would do it 20 years ago, that would be even less than 10 years ago. But now we are seeing, they can do whatever they want, and if they don't take actions today, so you can imagine in next 5 years, next 10 years, they will be more developed in retaliating, in making problems, and they can be unstoppable. So I hope that Mexican governments, US governments, they take some strong actions to make them as weak as possible, these cartels. So I'm going to subscribe also, and that was a very good one. So guys, I'm going to stop this stream. And probably I will stream after tomorrow. So have a good time, guys. Bye.